So thank you all so much for trickling in and spending some time with us here at Thin Air Labs. We're so happy you could join us and spend some time with us. My name is Leah Sarrich, and I am the head of story for Thin Air Labs. So I handle a lot of the communications and storytelling at Thin Air Labs. So thank you so much for being here and for joining us. I'll just walk you through briefly what we're going to talk about today in the hour that we have together. So as you may have seen as you were trickling in, this is in fact being recorded. So just an FYI on that one. And then we will actually publish a recording of this webinar onto our YouTube channel. So if you have to leave early or you want to share it with friends, we please encourage you to do that. And you can do that via our YouTube channel. So this will be published in the coming days. So you can certainly look forward to that. So today we will hear from Andrew Browne, who many of you know. He is our Funding Catalyst lead. And I'll do a more formal introduction of Andrew in just a bit. But you'll also get to meet some of the new members of our Funding Catalyst team. So we're very excited to introduce you to Dr. Katy Greene and Ben Hilborn. You'll hear from them as well. We should also have time for some questions at the end of our conversation today. So if you do have a question, feel free to put it into the chat. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear your questions. And we'd love to hear you sing as well. So that would be tremendous. And we thank you for that. That sounds great. And the really exciting bit too today is we'll also tell you a little bit about our brand new product traction service. So that will be just a little teaser for you to get excited about. And we'll have another webinar down the road on that one in the coming weeks. So we will talk a little bit now about Thin Air Labs itself, and I can tee that up for everybody. So Thin Air Labs, what is Thin Air Labs? It's basically an ecosystem studio. And you might be thinking, what is that exactly? Well, we actually felt we had to create this term. So it's really a new type of venture builder. And we wanted to create a new term to sort of illustrate how we work. And what we do is we tend to partner with not just a couple of entrepreneurs, but many entrepreneurs. And then we also partner with ecosystem partners in the innovation ecosystem. So we end up supporting not just a couple of ventures, but a whole bunch of ventures. And then we also support the innovation ecosystem itself. And the whole idea here is that by supporting both the ecosystem and many ventures, we're creating that velocity of change. We're creating that thriving system of innovation that's going to spin out all kinds of new ventures and new talent to the city. So that's why we've decided to call ourselves an ecosystem studio and create this whole new term for the kind of venture building that we do. So that's sort of what Thin Air Labs is. And what we really do at the heart of an ecosystem studio is we support all kinds of ventures at various different stages with capital in various forms, and we connect them with community networks. And then we also have services. And so that's why we're here today, which talk a little bit about some of our service offerings. And you can see on this slide, which Anda will speak to, that we actually talk to ventures and engage with ventures at various different stages of their development. So we do those engagements with our services. And so what we're talking about today is the Funding Catalyst service. And so I'll turn it over to Andrew to talk a little bit about the Funding Catalyst service itself. But why don't I do the intro? I wrote it, Andrew. I mean, you know, your intro is pretty impressive. So let me have a moment here to do your formal introduction. So Andrew Browne has been a co-founder of numerous ventures in his professional services and software enterprise. He's also the director of the Calgary Innovation Coalition. He's our head of business development and the Funding Catalyst lead at Thin Air Labs. He's very passionate about supporting the innovation ecosystem in Alberta and beyond, and really has great empathy for founders and entrepreneurs, as we all do at Thin Air Labs. And he truly believes, as we all do here at Thin Air Labs, that entrepreneurs will change the world for the better. And we're just here to help them do it. So that's one of the reasons why we designed the Funding Catalyst service. And Andrew Browne is now going to outline exactly what that Funding Catalyst service is. So over to you, Andrew.
Great. Thanks a lot, Leah. I appreciate that. Really excited to be here with everyone today, and good to see that there's a number of founders joining us from lots of different ventures, which is great to see. So this is a comfortable place for us to be. We live and breathe working with founders every day, myself and the rest of the Thin Air team, including the Funding Catalyst team. So really excited to tell you a little bit more about how we do that, specifically through the Funding Catalyst service line. And as Leah mentioned, we'll also talk a little bit about some of the other services that we're designing and starting to execute against now to support founders, ventures from the earlier stages all the way up to post-Series A and beyond. But a little bit more about Funding Catalyst for now and where this came from. So as I think Leah mentioned, I've founder myself, founded a number of different ventures over the last 8 or 9 years now, based in Calgary. And one of the things as a Canadian founder that you come across every time you're starting to find a business is that there's all sorts of different non-dilutive funding sources available to you as a founder. But they're really difficult to navigate and they're complicated and there's a whole lot of them. So sifting through, I think there's 1,200 that we're tracking across Canada right now available for these types of companies. Sifting through those 1,200 to find the, let's say 1, 2, or 3 that are going to be most impactful for your business at this time is really difficult just to start. Not to mention you have to have all of the material available to you. So like you might have not created a business plan, for instance, or done any kind of financial projections, but all of a sudden you found this great opportunity that's a really good fit for you and your venture at this stage, but you haven't created any of that material, and all of a sudden you're up against a deadline that you have to, throw in 20 hours of work over the weekend or in the evenings, which as we all know as founders, you just don't have. And so this service line in particular was really born out of founder empathy, having gone through this process myself. Searching for and accessing funding programs, confusing, time-consuming, takes a lot of mental attention away from what's most important at that stage in particular, which is running your business and trying to grow. We struggled to find the right term to call this. We started with grant writing. It's not grant writing. As we dug in with ventures and started offering this as a service, we realized that yes, we were supporting the writing of grants and applications, but more importantly, as a result of the work that we're doing. A little bit of background noise there. There was a whole lot of pre-work that we had to do to get companies ready to actually apply for funding. And this is no different than if you're going out to try to raise private capital for a venture as well. There's going to be certain documents and specific documents that investors or government funding programs are going to be looking for. And the reason they are is to identify, what stage that you're actually at. And how this program in particular, or private capital from an angel investor or a venture capitalist, is going to support the next stages of development of your venture. So this engagement is much more than grant writing services. And that's why we thought it was important to round out the team with really strong technical writers, but also folks that had a really keen interest in venture development and experience in that area too. Founders often fail because they target the wrong programs or they don't know how to present their story for the audience that they're trying to tell it to. And so what we do is dig in a little bit earlier than that, really dig in on some of these documents that you may have half created or may have created, make sure that they're up to date through that, and in some cases actually co-write or co-create some of those documents with founders. And the process of doing that actually gets us a much deeper understanding of what the founding team is trying to do, the market they're trying to target, the customers they're trying to go after, and the problem that they're actually solving for them. And all of that knowledge becomes much more valuable as we go, so that we can actually proactively identify different programs that might be available ahead of time, and make sure that the ventures that we're working with are ready for that. And of course, all of that ties into the financing strategy of a high growth venture overall. And so thinking about when your next raise is, who you're targeting on the private side, and using the, let's say, access to non-dilutive funding as a carrot for some of those investors, or as a leverage point for investors on the private side, or vice versa. As in, if you raise private capital, you might be in a better position to actually bring in non-dilutive funding as well. That's all part of the strategic approach to how we help support ventures here. So it's maybe, I won't use specific numbers, but roughly half strategy, half execution when we're thinking about how to best support a venture at this stage. And so it's really a combination of that strategic outlook of where are you trying to go? What are you trying to build? What's the vision for the company? And, going out and doing the research to find all of the different funding sources available, including in some cases, private capital, and how all of those fit together to help grow highly scalable ventures that can, have the ability to scale much far further beyond Canada, North America, or even globally. So our goal is to help ventures find the right funding at the right time, improve the chances of a successful outcome when it comes to applications itself. And a lot of that's timing, a lot of that's strategic thinking, and then a lot of it is just making sure that you're telling the story and emphasizing the right points that some of these funding programs want to see. So through this process, especially over the last couple of months, what we've identified is that there's obviously every venture is coming to us and engaging with us at different stages of their own development. And in some cases, they have a great idea, they're starting to execute, and in the best cases, really just starting to execute in the market, talking to customers, learning more about their problems and pain points, and then actually validating that a solution, there's a willingness to pay for a solution that they might be able to offer. But when you're doing all of that, you don't always have time to create documents like a business plan or even a pitch deck or pro formas or even promo material that you use to sell. You're just head down trying to focus on validating the early stages of your market. And in that case, there's a whole lot of heavy lifting that needs to go into actually creating some of those documents, really helping the founders and the entrepreneurs and their teams articulate what they're trying to do in a way that makes sense and also paints a picture on the investment side as to how money or capital into this business is going to generate a return. So non-dilutive funding sources from government programs, although they operate a little bit differently, they're still looking for very similar things when it comes to investing this capital. So just because it's taxpayer dollars or it's government funded programs does not mean that they're not looking for successful returns on investments. They might weigh things like job creation, things like that a little bit differently than a private investor would, but they're still going to be looking for the same things and looking for a really easy way to understand it and thus take it back to some of their the reviewers or the rest of their teammates to make sure that they can articulate it properly. So there's a whole lot of work that goes into that at that stage that has nothing to do with application writing and everything to do with kind of wayfinding or investment readiness for the venture. So when we first started this program, we were just focused on helping, basically providing extra horsepower and strategic thinking on the application writing side of things specifically. But as we learn more about the needs of the venture, specifically here in Alberta, we've actually expanded this offering and now have two separate tracks that tie together, but entrepreneurs can actually select or self-select based on what they actually need from us. And we'll give you some examples of a couple of ventures that we're working with on both. But this breaks down into venture design and investment readiness, which is really focused on validating the value proposition, product offering, helping some of these ventures gain some early stage traction that is going to be required to raise capital, whether privately or through non-dilutive sources. Oftentimes, if you're in this stage, you've raised a little bit of money, probably from the founding team, maybe friends and family, maybe a couple angel investors, but you're still pretty early stage. You've probably created some supporting documents, but probably haven't created a really comprehensive business plan. So we dig in and use the process of creating that to learn more about the venture and also help them develop a really strong and compelling narrative for what they're trying to do and how it's going to return capital to investors. And oftentimes you're looking for help getting your venture investment ready. So this is about creating a data room, organizing all of these documents into a really easy to digest way for investors and for other potential funders. And just making sure that when you're telling your story, you're telling it accurately in a compelling way, and it's translated across the rest of your team as well. So even your communication strategies out to customers are all kind of aligned around this common vision. So we're calling it venture design and investment readiness. That's really the outcomes we're trying to drive at this stage. But it gives ventures that are maybe a little bit too early to go after non-dilutive funding or private capital even, and pull in some of the other resources out there to identify when in this sector and for this venture, what does investment readiness really mean? And let's focus in on driving those outcomes for this venture to make sure that they're ready for the next step. Once we complete a few sessions and some really hands-on work in this stage with ventures, we're in a much better position to be able to identify programs that are available to the ventures and to the founders, and be able to focus in and target those programs in a much more efficient way, in a much more targeted way, so that we know that this is the right program for this venture at the right time, and we feel much more confident about our ability to create successful applications for that. So oftentimes at this stage, and sometimes ventures come to us and they're already there. We have a couple examples that Ben and Katy are going to be talking about today. That we're working with ventures that have a history or a track record of success for grant writing in particular. And that's great. And they're really just looking for us to be able to come in and help them target maybe new or creative ways of thinking about this funding. And also actually just writing the applications themselves, making sure that we're compiling all of the valuable information that they need into a compelling narrative for these types of funding applications. So oftentimes at this stage, you have signals of product market fit. You're starting to grow and scale the venture. You've likely raised some outside capital from angel investors and early stage VCs. So people outside of your immediate network and not just your friends and family and what you might call love money. And you've created many of the documents that you're going to need to make sure that you're investment ready. So oftentimes these ventures are at a stage where they've had to go down this path. They've created a business plan. They've done a bunch of market research. All of that information is nicely documented. We don't have to then do a bunch of the heavy lifting on that side, and we're really just available to help support them in putting together, submitting applications on time. And the really valuable part about this with a group like an ecosystem studio like Thin Air is that we also are in the process of raising a private fund ourselves. And so this does tie into our overall financing strategy of these types of ventures. And as we've teased a few times now, also fits into some of the other service lines that we have available for ventures that we work with, including product traction. So not every venture is coming, it's by no means cookie cutter. Every venture has their own challenges, their own needs at different times. Sometimes product traction is where we should start to make sure that we can validate the market first, and then try to bring in a little bit of outside capital or non-dilutive capital. With a full stack studio like Thin Air, we're able to be really flexible and agile with our approach to how we work with ventures. As demonstrated in our funding catalyst line specifically, but a little bit more holistically with all of the other services that we have available, including product traction. This all fits really nicely together and is somewhat of an a la carte style of engaging with ventures, where they can come to us and say, these are the 3 things that I'm struggling with right now. Can you help me? And we can pull those resources together really quickly. So just to give you an idea of some of the ventures that we're engaged with in both of these tracks, we're working with a really exciting education platform called Kaizen Education Services. This is I guess a traditional education services company. So they basically do one-to-one coaching and teaching of executive functioning for children primarily. So this is, outcomes related to like better grades in school and just more greater attention span towards what they're actually learning. And they're doing a great job of doing this. I think they've served over 500 customers to date, but they're looking at the market and saying this need is much bigger than just the people that we can serve on a one-on-one basis with individual coaches. How do we use technology or create product to actually scale this business model? And of course, if we took that directly to a funder, in the state that they were in, that lack of visibility or connection between how this is going to be a large, scalable, high growth venture is still lacking, because they're still kind of discovering that. And so what we ended up doing was they were kind of the inspiration for how we might approach this a little bit differently. And we're doing some wayfinding and some investment readiness work with Kaizen specifically. Another company in that same bucket is a company called Included by Design. Right now doing a lot of service work around helping builders, developers, property owners design their buildings with inclusivity and accessibility in mind. So they do that through servicing right now, through consultation, but they're looking at ways that they can use technology to actually grow and scale their business. And so we're doing the same kind of process here, where we're digging in, really helping them narrow in on who their actual target market is, what the entry point is for potentially different technologies that they could build, and helping them focus their attention on the one that's actually going to really drive impact for their business. On the other side, we have a couple examples here. True Angle, medical device company that does data tracking for people with swallowing disabilities. And really exciting company. I won't steal Katy's thunder. She's been working really closely with this company over the last little bit, and we'll talk a little bit more about this. But this is an example of a company that is fairly well established. They have a lot of material that they've created, very science-based material as well. So they've done some publications and some other work in that area. So they have a lot of this already documented. Now what they're looking for is speed and scale. So how do we leverage all of these opportunities that exist to help us grow our business faster? Zayzun, very similar enterprise software business that does wages on demand, primarily customers based out of the US. And we're working with them to add a little bit of extra horsepower to their team and make sure that they can target the right programs at the right time to help them grow and scale. And these are, between seed and Series A stage companies that are really starting to hit their scale. And we can integrate ourselves into their team really quickly make sure that we fit in with their workflow so that we're not adding additional overhead, and they can just use us a little bit more the way that makes the most sense for them, with a little less emphasis on wayfinding or customer validation. So a couple examples there, but more excited to introduce some of the most recent thin air teammates that have joined the Funding Catalyst team specifically over the last couple of months. So really excited to introduce Dr. Katy Greene and Ben Hillborn to the team. And they're going to talk a little bit more specifically about the work that they've been doing and what makes them excited about it. And just to give everyone in the audience some real world examples of what this actually looks like and feels like as a venture. So a couple of quick points just to mention here, really focus on creating a diverse team of entrepreneur-minded individuals, venture builders, people with science backgrounds that can help us with the technical writing side. So technical writing is one component of that, but it's a really important one as well. And so, that's maybe a hard skill that's really important for the work that we do. But it also has to be paired with a focus around venture and founders. And so we do have a very unique approach when it comes to this type of work. There's lots of other quote unquote grant writers or application writing services out there. We take a very founder venture focused approach to this. And what we're really trying to do is leveraging the application process. So the actual act of finding the right program, putting together an application for it, writing, to learn as much as we possibly can about that venture, help them tell their story in a more compelling way, and make sure that they're in touch with the right programs at the right time to help them grow. And we do that all from the lens of a founder, knowing that time is scarce for them. Stress is often at a really high point, and we're really not trying to add additional work to them. We're really trying to insert ourselves in the way that they already work, and that's all by design, just with founder empathy in mind. So with that, I'll pause. I'll some quick introductions to Katy and Ben, and really looking forward to hearing them talk a little bit more about some of the work that they've been doing with us.
Thanks so much for that, Andrew. It's so exciting to see our team grow like this, because we've just already experienced that this service has been really impactful for a lot of ventures already. And so we just want to keep doing more of what we've just started. So let's start with Dr. Katy Greene. So Katy Greene is the newest member of the Funding Catalyst team at Thin Air Labs. She comes from the University of Calgary, where she was a postdoctoral researcher working on furthering the understanding of early triggers of inflammation. She's always had a keen interest in innovation and the commercialization of research, which stems from her master's degree in biochemistry and with bioinnovation that she completed in Ireland. Through her PhD and postdoc at the University of Calgary, and as the co-chair of the scientific review panel for the Branch Out Neurological Foundation, Katy was blown away by the talent and potential that Alberta has to offer. So Katy moved here from Ireland in 2015, and you'll enjoy her Irish lilt when you talk to her about the Funding Catalyst service. So over to you, Katy. Tell us a little bit about yourself and some of the ventures that you're working with as a Funding Catalyst.
Thanks so much for the intro, Leah. I'm really excited to talk to everyone today about some of the work that we've been doing on the Funding Catalyst team and some of the great ventures that we've been lucky enough to work with. I'm going to dive right in and talk a little bit more about TrueAngle, which Andrew mentioned earlier. This company was founded actually as a spin-off from the U of A. Dr. Jana Rieger was a professor there in rehabilitation science, and she developed a device that allows patients to almost take the clinic home. So patients with swallowing disorders, they have to undertake intensive kind of physiotherapy rehab type science, which requires them to actually go into the clinic on a daily basis, which isn't very practical. And she's developed a device that allows them to monitor their exercises and how well they're partaking in this exercise on a daily basis from their own home. And it also has a clinician portal part of it. So clinicians and care teams can actually log in and monitor a patient's progress and make changes as needed without the patient really having to go to the clinic very often. So when TrueAngle came to us, as Andrew said, they were in a really good position. You know, they had all of their documents in a very polished, ready to go state, and they were really ready to ramp up and start commercializing their amazing product. And they just really wanted our help to access, different sources of non-dilutive funding to drive this commercialization forward. And we've really dug in with Jana and her team. We've done some grants that were specific to, adding commercialization associates to their team, to, driving their sales, helping them to get some funding for a particular partnership project that they want to create to open up a different market for them in the US. And that's been super fun. And that's an engagement that we have on an ongoing basis. And hopefully we'll get some great successes for Jana and her team. Another venture I'd like to talk about is Nimble Sciences. So Nimble's a great one because, they have this Simba capsule, which is, it's an ingestible capsule is the best way to put it. So it's a non-invasive tool that you swallow, and it can sample the microbiota of your small intestine. And usually for research and diagnostics, the small intestine is quite hard to get to. And even when you can, it's quite an invasive procedure to get to it. So they've come up with this kind of revolutionary, very simple idea that's going to really impact both like medical diagnostics, but also research and medical research, which is obviously very near and dear to my heart. They've had really good success in the past at acquiring non-dilutive funding. They are quite the team, actually. They're a small but mighty team. But it's been really fun with them because they came to us and they really wanted us to think outside the box. They challenged us. They said, this is what we have, this is what we've had, and this is where we want to go, and this is what we need to do. Can you figure out some funding for us? Can you figure out some partnerships that we need to make? And can you help us, build research proposals? Can you help us put our big ideas into something practical? So that's been a lot of fun. I've been sneaking into the office and grabbing the whiteboard to try and map out these big ideas that they have and make them into tangible results. So we're working with them. This engagement has been really focused on research. And specifically what we're trying to do is help them achieve some clinical validation studies through partnerships within the university and within that research realm, and access actually some, foundational or charity-based non-for-profit type funding. So the two ventures that I've discussed so far, they're quite far along the chain of, their commercialization efforts. But we also do work with ventures that are, early stage in their journey. And one that comes to mind is actually one called Bloom. It's a really nice story. It's a mom who came across medicinal properties of a bee product, and through sheer grit and determination, she just persevered for 10 years, did some amazing, actually basic research into some of these properties, and she has no scientific background. And she came to us and she said, I don't know what the next steps are. This is what I want to do. I want to make this a product. I want to get this out there and help as many people as I can. So with this engagement, it was very different because there's no product, there's no real business there yet. It was really foundational work. And we've really helped Penny to, dive into the literature, look at her data, what she has so far, and organize it and come up with what the next steps are. And the result of that is we've been able to actually set up a really good strategic partnership for her in the research space out in Quebec. And she's getting some extraction work done to actually turn this from, more of a focus on the research within the academic sphere into something that's going to become more of a tangible product that she can actually take to market. And we've been able to secure her 75% of the funding towards getting all of this work done. And what we hope by the end of the year is that she'll actually have something that she can decide what her product is going to look like and how she's going to take it to market. So it's been a really exciting journey. We haven't been here for long, but it's been such a pleasure and such an honor to work with all these ventures that we have. And I can't wait to work with more, and hopefully some of you here on the call.
Thanks so much, Katy, for that. Isn't that exciting? It's just to see this impact that we're having on these ventures, and they're already growing. And this is what we mean when we talk about creating impact in our community. It's truly incredible to see this work in action. All right. Thank you for that, Katy. Let's move on to Ben. So Ben is an electrical engineer by training, but is an entrepreneur at heart. He has worked in startups in his entire career. He started with Zephyr Sleep Technologies, building a new way to treat sleep apnea, then on to 4i Innovation innovations. I hope I'm saying that correctly, Ben. You can correct me later if I'm wrong, where he designed and commercialized sports and industrial electronics. After that, he co-founded a SaaS startup called Obvious, where he and a team built a device management platform for consumer electronics. Most recently, Ben worked as a product manager at ZeroKey, where they were building the world's most accurate social distancing and indoor tracking technology. Ben is passionate about supporting founders and working with a whole bunch of ventures to build out the innovation ecosystem right here in Alberta. Over to you, Ben.
Thanks for the intro, Leah. And yeah, you absolutely nailed it. Yes. I really love the energy that we have here in Alberta. This deep desire to make new and better things, and so I think Thin Air is doing such incredible work to help founders achieve these goals of improving the world in their own little ways. And funding catalyst being one of those things. And so to talk about some of the really exciting work that I'm doing with founders right now, I'm going to start with Zayzoon. And they would lean more towards the more mature startup. They came to us already having done some grant writing themselves, having secured some grants on their own, but realizing that they need some bigger and higher impact non-dilutive funding to accelerate the expansion of their products into new markets. And to tell you a little bit about them, they make access to earned wages easy and non-predatory, with tools to build financial literacy and wellness over time. This gets wage workers out of the cycle of using predatory lenders to stay afloat. And so that we really align with the goals of the founders that come to us when we see that you're doing something to make the world a better place. That gets us really excited too. And not only do we have the empathy for the stress and the mountain of to-dos of being a founder, but also we get it. We get that there's this insatiable desire to fix this problem that you see in the world. And so this is, we love being able to connect on that deep level with founders. And another one I want to highlight is Go Vertical. Go Vertical is another local startup. They're a bit earlier in their journey. They're building a next generation AI content creation platform for the entertainment and advertising industries. They're early stage, but they have some initial customers, and they're at that sweet spot, like right before the inflection point of onboarding some really big, really game-changing customers. And that comes with its own set of problems. They need to figure out, how do I build the capacity internally, whether this is manpower, whether this is people, whether this is the product itself. Can the product scale to meet the demand of, if this customer that I'm talking to says yes tomorrow, oh my goodness, we have a lot to do. And so working with the founder to identify, okay, what do I need to put together? What do I need to think about? What pitfalls are ahead of me? And how can I build a good strategy and use non-dilutive capital to execute on that strategy to make sure that when that signed contract comes in the door, that we hit the ground running and we can capitalize on that opportunity to scale. That you work years to close one of these deals, and you need to be firing on all cylinders to be able to execute on that. And so that's one of the things where we can come in and, like Andrew said, it's not just non-dilutive capital. It's just sitting with the founder for half an hour and letting them vent about, holy smokes, this has been a tough week, or holy smokes, like this week has been amazing. We've had so many wins, and not only just being there for the founder, but using that as when founders are telling these impassioned stories. Normally you tell this to your friends, but this is the raw and super valuable storytelling that in turn creates a great narrative to the organizations that want to fund you. And so we love listening to founders, not only because we have that empathy and we want to be there for them, but also this is the good stuff that's going to that's going to get you capital. And so much like Katy, I absolutely love working with these founders and helping them solve their problems, because that's really what we do here at Funding Catalyst.
Oh, thanks so much, Ben. You see what we mean about founder empathy? We have so much of it because we've been there, done that, and we're here to help. So that's why we created the Funding Catalyst service. So thank you to Ben and Katy for sharing your stories and giving us some insight into the ventures that you are engaging with right now. But we also wanted to take this opportunity just to give you a little brief overview of the product traction service as well. So we continue to build out these service offerings to help grow all of these ventures. And so we've just launched the product traction service. So Andrew, if you're willing, can you give us just a little brief overview of the product traction service and what it is exactly?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, like these are all designed with founders in mind, and a whole lot of founder empathy. So knowing that, especially at the early stages, the number one problem that founders and ventures are trying to solve for is traction. And traction can be one of those terms that you hear probably often from private capital or private investors and say, well, no, come back when you have more traction. Come back when you have more traction. And this will be trure for non-diluted funding sources as well. But oftentimes founders have a hard time trying to figure out exactly what that is and how to measure it and how to make sure that it's told in a compelling way that allows them to basically raise capital, attract talent, bring people onto the team, and actually grow their business. And so product traction is really a service line that's focused on specifically identifying the customer need, pairing it or matching it with the technology that's actually going to be able to solve that problem for them, and validating that there's a willingness to pay by those customers in a replicable way, in a way that you can actually scale it and actually build a really big, high impact business around. So there's a few different tracks similar to Funding Catalyst that you can engage with our team around for that service. You can come to us and we can do a quick sprint around what do we mean by traction? How do we measure it? Who are we talking about? Who are your customers? I'll help founders answer all of those questions. In some cases, you might need a little bit more integrated support, and we do have a full stack engineering team that specializes in actually building and building out products and testing, and doing that in a really efficient way that allows us to test different assumptions along the way as we go. In other cases, it's more strategic. Let's start with a quick sprint, but then let's come up with a whole product strategy roadmap to help us identify which customer to go after, in which order, and how much capital we're going to need, both privately and through potentially non-dilutive funding sources to actually do that. And in other cases, it's a combination of all of those things. And so we do have a full stack team that's available that you could really help us out, through the discovery process of just getting to know a venture, which we're more than willing to do at any stage of your development, to take that first call and just learn more about what you're doing as a founder and what you're trying to execute on. Through that process, we can identify, I think what you're really challenged with right now is just getting your first customer. So you have this product, you have some interest, but you don't have anyone that's actually signing or paying for it. How do we fix that problem? And in some cases, it's as simple as like a 15-minute conversation, a little bit of outside perspective from people that have also built ventures to help you identify like what's the actual stuck point that I'm struggling with right now. And as a founder, oftentimes it's there, you kind of have an idea of what it could be, but you're so deep in the weeds that you have a hard time identifying how to actually solve for it. And so we're able to kind of come in through the discovery process and just really pair the founders with the right type of service offering that allows us to do that. So product traction line in particular is really focused on the earliest stages of product development, all the way up to how do I get my next 10 customers? How do I get my next 20 customers? Can we replicate this? How big is this market opportunity versus this segment over here? So I think that's really what product traction is all about. And as I mentioned, a lot of the common thread through all of the folks on the Thin Air team is that we have experience with ventures. We know what it's like to be in the founder's shoes. And so we know how difficult it can be. And what we're really trying to do is drive impact into the venture, but do it really efficiently in a way that is just easy for founders to engage with. And so our product team is led by a guy named Mitch Gillespie, and he is actually a former Wave person too. So our capital team partner, James Locker, we've recruited him after their exit. Really strong at just identifying, like how to actually experiment with different product channels, how to experiment with channels, how to experiment with testing different customer segments against the product that you currently have versus maybe one that you have to build, and coming up with a full scale roadmap that is going to help guide these ventures through their next stages of development in as efficient way as possible. And then, of course, all of that ties back to, well, how am I going to pay for all this? What's the financing strategy behind it? And that's where these service lines and others kind of fit together. It's oftentimes, okay, you need a little bit of capital. You've identified these non-dilutive funding sources. We keep getting told that we just don't have enough traction. So maybe we start with the product traction side first. In other cases, you have some good early traction, but you just haven't created some of the documents necessary, and you don't know how to tell your story effectively. So we'll dig in on a wayfinding or investment readiness engagement first. These are all swappable, and so we can kind of come in, do some discovery work, really understand what the venture is trying to do, and identify the right track and the right way to engage with thin air to get the most impact out of our team and our service line. So I'll pause there, and maybe Leah or others might have some other questions about that, and we're more than happy to take those. And I think, I don't know if we emphasized this at the beginning, but if you do have questions and you don't want to turn on your mic, or you're maybe in transit like Ricardo, feel free to throw them up in the chat, and more than happy to address those as well. One question that's often common is this a paid service? And so I just want to just touch on that right away. These are paid services that in Funding Catalyst scenario often include an upfront fee along with a small contingency on successful capital that's raised. In other cases, it's maybe a small retainer that just unlocks or makes resources on the thin air team available to a founder as they're navigating. Those are all pretty entrenched or fairly integrated services that we're working very directly with founders. At the very surface level, it might just be, I just need 15 minutes of someone's time once a month to talk through, what I'm kind of going through. And of course, we're invested in helping ventures do that, because those companies grow up and become great, high impact, high growth companies that we can then offer other services to, and also look at for investment opportunities as well. So I'll pause there, and I think we have one question up in the chat that we can start with there.
We sure do, Andrew. This is Chris. Chris is asking, hey, Andrew, can you send us a price list on the services? And I'm sure you can.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have some content and some material that we can send out. I believe we're going to be sending that out tomorrow, tomorrow sometime during the day. So what you can expect to see there is a copy of this presentation deck. So there's a little bit of information there, fairly high level. If you're interested in learning more from there, we do have some brochures that we've created for each of these different service lines, and a breakdown in there. What you'll see is a breakdown of how they kind of pair out and how we think about the engagements across over time across different types of ventures and different stages. But absolutely, definitely more than willing to send that out, Chris.
Terrific. Thanks for that, Andrew. And then I also just want to point out too that we have information on our website as well. So there's a couple of blog posts on each of these services where you can read a bit more about what the services are, how they work, what they might look like. And then there's forms that you can fill out there too. And, we promise get back to you right away if you fill out one of those forms. One of us will get back to you right away and answer all the questions that you have. So certainly head over to our website if you have more questions as well. But never hesitate to reach out to us. We love to engage with founders anytime. One of the other common questions that we get, Andrew, with our service lines often is, how much time does this take? Like, what is this going to look like if I engage with you? Can you talk to that one a little bit, Andrew?
Yeah, all of these services are designed as kind of sprints. And so what we're trying to do is compartmentalize the timeline that's required to achieve very specific outcomes. And so what that starts with is, like, what are the outcomes we're trying to achieve? So I need to gain customer 1, or I need to show that I can go from customer 1 to customer 10. And what we'll do is sit down and look at that and say, okay, what can we do in a 3 to 4 week sprint? And most of our service lines are kind of designed in a similar way. So for Funding Catalyst specifically, the investment readiness and kind of wayfinding stage or track is really designed to be like we say 3 to 4 weeks, sometimes a 4 to 6 week kind of engagement, where we have 3 or 4 very in-depth sessions that we'll go through with founders, hopefully in person sometime soon. But right now we've been running those all virtually. With a bunch of asynchronous communication between those sessions. And so, and they'll be staged based on the needs of the venture. So in some cases let's start with, just some very foundational customer discovery and validation work. The second session is going to be something like a product strategy and roadmap session that's going to be very specific around what do I build next, or what do I build first to test my assumptions and validate the market that we're going after. And then the third one is often paired with like financing strategy. So now that we have a better idea of who our customers are and the needs that they're coming to us with, and what they need to build to serve them, how do we actually think about financing the business from cradle to grave? And so we'll do that over the course of usually 4 weeks. A lot of communication beforehand so that we can actually support the ventures as they execute on some of the exercises that we assign between sessions. And we'll carve out 30 minutes per week. Sometimes the ventures need it, sometimes they don't. That we're available to actually dig in a little bit more in depth around some of these things. So typically designed as kind of 4 week sprints for each of them. On the product traction side, it can be much more in depth. And so in some cases, there's we have 2 or 3 engineers on our team. We need you to really help us execute on our next build. And sometimes those can be a little bit longer in like 1 to 3 months kind of thing. Really depends on the needs for the founders.
Terrific. Thanks so much, Andrew. We've got another question coming in here from Hamid. He's saying, very informative presentation. Thank you. You're welcome. Any advice on when is the right time to engage you? We are in customer discovery and need resources that cost around 6 to 12K. Are we better off engaging you rather than invest in the product development directly? That's a great question. You want to tackle that one, Andrew?
Yeah, or Ben or Katy might be able to as well. My immediate thought is, I think we'd probably just have to learn a little bit more about the stage and a little bit more information about kind of where you're at, specifically around engagement with customers. Like, are you running pilots? Are you still doing customer interviews? All of those types of things. The wayfinding and investment readiness, typically we're looking at companies and looking to engage with companies that are have a little bit of validation under their belt already. Oftentimes they've invested some of their own money, founder money, or potentially friends and family money into the business, and have kind of some strong signals from the market, but still trying to figure out exactly what what the business needs to look like in order to actually execute on that. That's a really good time to engage with us, because I think that there's oftentimes pitfalls and nuances that we can help you avoid. And we can go through this exercise of like a document, like a business plan, for instance, is so in depth, so comprehensive, has so much material in it, but the process and I'm going to get laughed at because I know some ventures that I've done some other business model development work with. I used to teach business model Canvas 101, and I said business model Canvas is the resource that you need at this stage. But as soon as because it's fast, it's agile, it's visual, it helps you iterate on some of your ideas really quickly. But as soon as you're looking to bring in outside capital from any source, you're going to have to create some of these documents. So we look at that and say, how do we work through a business plan together and create it in parallel to helping you unlock, navigate some of the barriers that you're experiencing with the business right now. So if you can't answer who your customer is, and you're going to have a really hard time gaining traction. So why don't we tackle those both at the same time, and then also create some content that's going to be helpful for you along the way. So Hamid, I don't know exactly where you're at with some of those things. We'd love to have a conversation, explore, and as a studio, what that really allows us to do is say, well, maybe the time's not right now, but here's some other folks in our network that have really good programs available for you at that stage. We can make that connection. We can stay in touch in the meantime, and maybe we can re-engage in the near future after that. So that allows us to also really be agile and keep the founder focus at heart to say, like, what is the right resource? We're really not trying to insert ourselves and say, like, this is the only path forward. There's lots of other options available, and we just want to find the right one for founders at the right time. So I'd say it starts with the conversation. Good time to engage is I guess maybe the best time is always yesterday. But I mean, it starts with a phone call. And what I found as a founder building companies is oftentimes you just got to go start out by having some of these conversations. One thing leads to another, and you're better off than where you started, even if it's a little bit too early for a paid engagement with us.
Terrific. Good answer, Andrew. Thank you for that. Another common question we get a lot is, are there sectors that you work with specifically? And Katy, if you're okay to answer this one, I would throw it over to you because you sort of have a very clear expertise area, but that's not, of course, the only area that we look at. Katy, do you want to address that sort of sector question?
Yeah, for sure. We definitely have, I don't want to call them preferred sectors, but sectors that we lean to. I always gravitate towards the health and science ones for obvious reasons. It fits my background. But that doesn't mean, like, if we truly believe in a founder and a venture and what they're doing and we think we can help, then we're going to lean in and try and help you the best way we can. I'm currently working with a venture that's developing a real estate platform, and I've never learned so much about real estate in my life. So the answer really is no. There's nothing off limits. We will be pretty honest. If we don't think that we can help, we're not going to kind of try and get a quick buck, and we're always trying to help in whatever way we can. So we will be pretty honest if we think it's so far out of our wheelhouse that we can't help in some way.
Thanks for that, Katy. And Ben, maybe you can weigh in on this one too. You've got a lot of sector expertise as well in certain areas, but you can also maybe weigh in on the idea that it's so necessary to have that narrative down because that's just sort of an essential building block that these ventures are going to need.
Yeah. Well, for me, I don't have nearly the sector expertise as Katy. I'm much more of a generalist, but also like Katy, a lifelong learner. So, this is when Andrew says that we want to feel like an extension of your team. We will dive into your product and learn how it works. And we're even going out and looking at articles and trying to bring ourselves up to speed on the tech that's behind what you're building. We want to understand what you're building, how and why, and that kind of that brings me to the story part of it. A lot of times, founders can approach their venture and the market from a variety of different angles. And this can come from a pain point or the realization that you've developed a product that's potentially novel. But the common thread that has to be true, whether it's because you're trying to secure non-dilutive capital or whether you're trying to raise a venture fund, a venture round, or most importantly, whether you're trying to get customers, is being able to tell your story very well, and be able to have all the right pieces in it of, we have this deep understanding of our customer's problem because we've felt it ourselves, or we've gone out and canvassed the streets to understand it the best we possibly can. And then we've taken that and turned it into a product that hopefully will solve that problem for people. And the outcome of that is we build a scalable and sustainable business. And that, while it sounds simple, that kind of 3-step process can be very tricky. And that could be for a lot of reasons. Maybe you're a very technical founder and you get really excited by the fact that, you've solved nuclear fusion. And, that's great. And all you want to do is talk about the amazing technical advances that you've done. But that's not going to sell a municipality on why they should buy your fusion reactor. And so that's the beauty of having this multifaceted and multi-talented team, is we put all of our heads together to understand the tech, to understand the problem and the pain points, and to understand the go-to-market strategy. And all of that together, we want to act as that extension of your team to help pull all the pieces together, and tell the story that gets everyone excited.
The last thing I just want to touch on there, when we look at whether it's a fit to engage or if it's the type of venture that we get really excited about, what we're actually more interested, as opposed to the sector specific that it's in, is how many humans will this impact positively if it were to be successful? And we actually look at that as a barometer for investment and our thesis and how we think about investment into companies. And the rule of thumb for us is the more people, the more human impact, or the greater the human impact, the greater return on investment on the capital side. And that's what we're more driven by, as opposed to one sector or another. But to Katy's point, we are by proxy. There's so many businesses out there. There's so many different opportunities out there that we develop an expertise in certain areas, and we tend to lean a little bit more over there. And in some cases, when really exciting venture comes to us and it's in a sector that we're not as well versed in, we'll look for partners that we can surround that venture with if we were to engage with them. And so Katy mentioned this, we're going to be really honest. We're not sure if this is a good fit because we just don't have the expertise on the team. But hey, maybe there's a few folks we can bring in to help us execute on this, and maybe that's going to be a better outcome for everyone anyways.
Terrific. Andrew, thank you so much for that. I actually think that's a lovely note to end on, this idea of creating as much human impact as we can with the ventures that we engage with in the innovation ecosystem that we're trying to develop. So it is 4:59. I just want to take a moment to say thank you so much to everybody for joining us today. It's such a lovely, lovely time to see all of your faces. So thank you so much for this. Don't hesitate to reach out to us. Andrew's email's right there, andrew@thinairlabs.ca. You can always go to our website as well. All the forms are there, and our email address for the company is there as well. So we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to help you build what's next. And thank you so much for joining us today, and look for an email from us tomorrow. Thanks so much, everyone. We'll see you again soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.